It all started with a very simple idea. Tell the stories of how successful middle market CEOs made it to the corner office. I'm Brant Handley, founder and managing director of Resource Options International, or ROI. We're the USA's premier executive search firm focused exclusively on empowering middle market companies to attract, hire, and retain A players while transforming top executives' careers and lives. ROI's Into the Corner office is dedicated to discovering how middle market CEOs advance their career, and we're making these remarkable and sometimes quite unbelievable stories available to you for the very first time. Listen and learn about the challenges they've overcome, the interesting people they've met along the way, and the lessons learned that steered these executives' unique journey into a middle market corner office of their own. I know you enjoy these CEO stories as much as I've enjoyed recording them. So thank you for listening today. And if you like what you've heard, rate us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm looking forward to you joining me on the next great middle market CEO adventure into the corner office. My guest today is Josh McCall, Chairman Emeritus of Jack Morton Worldwide. Josh focuses on growth, consulting on key client relationships, and recruiting top talent for the agency. In 2022, he stepped down as CEO and chairman after being an integral part of the agency since 1984 and holding a variety of roles ranging from account executive to chief operating officer before being promoted to CEO. Under his leadership, the agency expanded its reach across the US, Europe, Australia, and Asia, and was recognized for its creativity, winning awards at the Effies, Cannes Lions, D&AD, Clios, X, Pro, and Webby Awards. Josh was instrumental in transforming the agency into an ideas-focused culture that creates extraordinary work for brands, and he kept the agency at the forefront of the experience economy. Josh earned a bachelor's degree in sociology from the University of Pennsylvania, completed business and management training at the Amos Tuck School at Dartmouth College, and the Kenan-Flagler School at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. He holds an honorary Doctor of Commercial Science degree from Suffolk University in Boston, and also serves on the board of the Vineyard Trust, the owner of historic island landmarks. Josh McCall, welcome into the corner office.
Great to be with you today.
Great to have you here. And as I said earlier, it's very rare that we find someone who has spent almost their entire career at one company. And you're a dying breed, but a wonderful one to have here. And just can't wait to dig in and hear about all the wonderful things that you were able to do at Jack Morton, starting as an account exec and now obviously as chairman, having served as CEO for many years. But before we get to that, I want to talk a little bit about the early years. Tell us, Jack, where you grew up. Jack, now I'm calling you Jack. Tell us, Josh.
It's not the first time.
I can imagine. You embody the company, I'm sure, in so many ways. But let's talk about your early years, Josh, where you grew up and what your early family life was like.
Well, I was the fourth born of great parents who raised me in Greenwich, Connecticut. I spent my formative years getting a great education at the Greenwich Country Day School, and then I went on to boarding school at Phillips Academy in Andover, Massachusetts, and then college at the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia.
New England born and bred. Was it hard to go to the Mid-Atlantic after spending so much time, your first 20 years?
Well, interestingly enough, we moved to Greenwich when I was 4 years old from the Philadelphia area where my parents were raised. And my great-grandfather was the president of the Philadelphia Electric Company at the turn of the century.
Okay.
And you can imagine that kind of role and responsibility at that time. He would have been one of today's technology leaders.
Deeper.
So I got back to my roots by attending Penn.
I love that. So you said the fourth born. Were you the four of four, so the youngest?
I was the youngest, yep.
Got it. Brothers and sisters older than you?
Two brothers and a sister. And in fact, my oldest brother, Chris McCall, was born with Down syndrome. And my parents dedicated their life to making his life a great one. And he lived at home and worked and was very much part of our family. He was a great man. And born in 1947, and died at the age of 65, which way exceeded what a life expectancy for someone with his disability when he was born was, which was a credit to my parents' commitment to making sure that he had a great life and had good nutrition and physical fitness and opportunities to be out and about and in the community.
Tell us more about your parents, Josh. What did they do?
Well, my dad was also a Penn grad, and initially went to Yale his freshman year, and then that was interrupted by World War II. Mm. He went off and served 3 years in Pearl Harbor after the bombing, and came back and finished his education at Penn, and started to raise a family, and spent his career at one company as well. He was in the forest products industry and worked for originally what was the Champion Paper Company that became Champion International, that ultimately was acquired by International Paper. And my mom was a homemaker, but very dedicated to supporting the Greenwich Association for Retarded Citizens, and was a real pioneer in creating the group home environment for those with special needs who could move out of their family homes and live in a group home environment. My mom would help to identify the properties and acquire and decorate the rooms and homes for those individuals. So, and my dad also was involved in giving back to the community as the president of the Greenwich Association for Retarded Citizens. So grew up in a family where we were, concerned about those who were less fortunate and in needs, and nonprofits, which those in my family have continued to do today.
Awesome. And of course, support of your older brother, Chris. Wonderful stuff. And your dad, was he in marketing, general management, sales? What was his role?
He had a variety of responsibilities in his career, from originally in sales, evolving into marketing, into general management. In the latter years of his career, he was involved in the presence and corporate work down in DC, with representing the industry and the company and in the affairs area.
Yeah. Josh, you mentioned you were inspired by your family's commitment to the charitable organization, particularly with those that needed the kind of help that they did, and inspired obviously by your older brother. What are the kinds of things do you remember from your childhood that really inspired you by maybe your parents, maybe a teacher or two, or coach along the way?
Yeah, I think that jumping back to Chris was an important inspiration in my life, because Chris was a friend to all. He had no judgment. Yeah. You could be the senator of Connecticut or the checkout person in the grocery store, and he treated everybody with the same respect and smile and dignity that they all deserved. And so that was an important grounding for me. I think also, the commitment that our parents gave to the four of us to ensure that we had the best that we could have in education. In Chris's instance, it was the social services that the town could provide for him, and thus the reason that my dad chose Greenwich as the place to locate us when he was relocated from Philadelphia to New York City for his work. And they made a lot of sacrifices to ensure that the other three of us could have great education from day one, from the schools that we attended. So a real commitment to education and getting and ensuring that we had the best that they could make available to us at an expense. It was they gave up a lot to provide that for us, we didn't take a lot of family vacations. We didn't have a second home anywhere, or a lot of the things that people in Greenwich had growing up in that climate and environment, as obviously a very wealthy New York suburb.
Yeah.
Beyond that, that commitment to ensuring that they did what they could do to help those that were less fortunate. So those are some headlines of that area.
You mentioned education. Were you a good student?
I was a good student when I applied myself. Good enough to transition from one grade school to another, and
well, you got into Phillips Academy. That's no small feat.
And to get out.
That's right. And get out with a degree.
Yeah.
One of my daughters went to Taft, but we looked at Phillips and Exeter and all the schools up there, and they are, they have pretty high admission standards. So I'm sure you're being a little modest there. Did you have a favorite subject as you're going through elementary and then high school?
You asked about a teacher, and there is one teacher that had a great impact on me, and it was a teacher named Mr. Carroll Bailey at Andover, who taught English. And whenever I write, I often think about Mr. Bailey, because he taught me how to write. He taught me grammatical structure and really how to ensure that sentences, paragraphs, commas, etc., were all in the right places. And that's a tool that I have found to be very valuable all through my life, and continues to be in anything that I write, whether it be an email, a letter, or prepare myself for speaking, or in any form of written communication. So that was a very valuable.
Yeah, served you well in your advertising career. If you had to boil down what Mr. Carroll was his first name or his last name?
Carroll was his first name. Bailey was his last name.
Mr. Bailey. If you had to boil down, and kind of concisely say, what do you think were the 2 or 3 things that you learned about writing from him? What would those be?
Really, sentence structure. It was just simple stuff. But when you see in today's world how poorly even those at great schools, as young men and women reach out to me with their CVs and their interest in Jack Morton, how poorly they can communicate in the written language today. It strikes me and reminds me of the importance of just very clear, well-structured communication, that in today's world of texting and emails, everyone's moving so fast. This millennial generation has often overlooks the importance of writing properly.
It's become a lost art. Yeah, as you know, I grew up in Procter & Gamble, and of course, we're famous for the one-page memo. And I'll never forget the very first memo that I had to work on with my brand manager, the very first job, 13 revisions of a trip report. So I remember Peter Smith very well and what I had to learn through writing. And I'll tell you, it was hard to get through. But, I think there was those lessons that we can learn when we're younger on communication that becomes so important in our careers.
Well, we'll get into it as we progress along, but I will mention it now. One of the things that I did in my early days when I joined Jack Morton was I had a great mentor in Bill Morton, who's Jack Morton's son. And when I joined, Bill was the CEO of the agency, having succeeded his father. And one of the great things that Bill provided for me was the opportunity to ride in and out of New York City with him in the morning and in the evenings when his travels didn't interrupt that, or my travels didn't interrupt that. And Bill would review drafts of letters that I was writing to prospects, and proposals that were drafts of proposals. And he too would critique the writing and the format, much like your brand manager did
Yeah.
in your days at P&G, and it's just another example and reminder of how important that written communication is.
No question. Again, before we get on to college and those first jobs, other interests during high school. Were you in sports, music, theater, debate? Did you have any entrepreneurial things going on? Give us a little more of a
Yeah,
rundown.
athletics was very important and a big
Yeah,
part of my life from my early days. I played football, hockey, and lacrosse. Lacrosse really ended up being my primary athletic endeavor and interest. I was an All-American lacrosse player at Andover, and went on and played 4 years of Division I lacrosse at Penn.
nice.
I was always working all through the latter years of grade school, certainly high school and college years. Always had a summer job, even back to being a youngster with a paper route. Um, I enjoyed photography and visual arts, and have always had a very high desire for social engagement, large group of friends, and community.
Yeah, love it. Other than Chris, who obviously had his own educational needs, and it sounds like he went very far with that. Did your other siblings go on to college, and was it kind of a foregone conclusion that you would too?
They did.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
My sister also attended Penn, and my other brother attended Harvard.
Okay, got it. And was Penn your first choice?
Probably not my first choice. It was amongst a group of largely Ivies and maybe some of the better known NESCAC schools. But as I say to people, nobody was introducing me to schools like Duke and the University of Virginia. I have one daughter who went to the University of Virginia, and I say to myself, well, I could have ended up in Cambridge, Providence, New Haven, West Philadelphia, or Charlottesville, or or the Raleigh Durham area. But in those days, those great Southern schools weren't as well promoted
Yeah, they're on the radar screen.
by the
Yeah,
college counselors. So
yeah,
it was West Philadelphia where my path took me.
got it. What did you decide to study and why?
I studied sociology,
Hmm.
and I started to go down a path of economics and really didn't like that. And I enjoyed the subject matter of sociology, learning about human behavior and what drives human behavior. And I think it's a part of that Chris McCall connection of knowing and understanding and respecting all forms of
Hmm.
people who are out there, and also just an interest in what led me ultimately into marketing and communications, and particularly event marketing.
Now, that first job, I believe, was with Cablevision and brought you back up to Connecticut. Tell us about the choice with that, because we know you didn't stay there long before joining Jack Morton, but I'm curious about choosing them. Now, do they still exist, or they get
They
pulled into
do.
something?
Yep,
Yeah.
it's
Okay.
Charles Dolan's company.
Right. Right.
Was Charles Dolan's. He since sold it to somebody else, but
Right.
the brand still exists largely in the Metro New York area, I
Right.
believe. Um, Now, the Cablevision path is an interesting story. When I was at Penn starting to figure out what I wanted to do for a career after college, I would go to the Annenberg School of Communications
Mm.
Library, not only to bone up on some of my studies and prepare for exams and whatnot, but what I would do when I needed a break from the books was look at some of the periodicals at the Annenberg School. And Ad Age was one of them that was very, very much on all the racks. And I
Of
started
course.
to read Ad Age a lot, and really kind of had this North Star that pulled me toward advertising and marketing.
Mm.
And so I decided that was the industry that I wanted to explore. Got my resume together, and upon graduation, we didn't in those days do the internships to the degree that people do them today. It was
Right.
really, a little less formal the whole career and job search process. So upon getting my degree from Penn, heading back to Greenwich, living with my parents, I got my resume and started to network myself up and down Madison Avenue. And it was the summer of 1982. And it was, if you look in the charts of recessionary times,
That's right.
That was a real dark period. And so all I heard from the ad agencies was, like you, resume looks great, but we're not hiring right now. In fact, we're really laying people off. And so
So you really did intend a career in advertising.
I did.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And what led you to that? Was it again just the reading the ad age and kind of
Yeah.
being
Yeah.
mesmerized by the marketing? Yeah.
It was really just kind of one of those North Star things that as I looked at the work that I was seeing reported on in Ad Age, understanding the industry,
Right.
Knowing some of my friends' dads who were in the industry and liking them, and starting the ability to potentially use some of them as points of introduction, all together led me to that versus banking, real estate, and some of the other core areas that some of my classmates were ending up in, in the financial world and such. And so after walking up and down Madison Avenue and spreading my resume around everywhere I could, as well as the big brands, and suffering a whole lot of rejection, and slapping some paint on houses to make a living in the meantime.
Wearing out more shoe leather.
One day, a friend of mine's dad, who was at Ogilvy and Mather, called me and said, "Josh, I know you want to get into advertising and times are tough. One of my colleagues has left Ogilvy to become the director of marketing at Cablevision Systems Corporation, and they're looking for salespeople." So as I have often said, with my fancy Ivy League and incredible education, my first job out of college was one step behind the Electrolux salesman selling cable TV subscriptions door to door.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
And that really was a gift, because it taught me a lot about, it continued this kind of sociological exploration of what drove consumer decisions. Much to one's surprise, the people who spent the most on my services were those in the lowest income areas that I was selling in. Those who had the most money had other choices and alternatives and didn't need the rainbow super gold package of all the channels that I could sell them. They were maybe even happy just retaining their TV antenna on top of their roof and going on vacation to Nantucket. But one thing led me to another. After 11 months of understanding rejection and perseverance, it was a commission-only job.
Oh, wow.
They gave me a business card and a stamp to stamp my name on it.
It was a blank business card. I love it. Well, I think you learned a little bit about humility too, Josh. That had to be part of the package there.
But I earned enough to pay my bills, buy a car, move out of the house, and
Wow.
off I went.
Yeah, great. And then about a year plus later, did you go back to Madison Avenue or get the call from Jack Morton? How did you get over there?
Well, as fate would have it, I ended up in a beautiful neighborhood in Greenwich, banging on doors, knocked on Bill Morton's front door, and his wife, he was not home. His wife said they were not interested. I went down the street to a neighbor's house who bought everything I could sell him and said to me, "Did you meet Mr. Morton?" And I said no, and explained to him what I'd experienced down the street. He said, "Well, I'm going to set up an appointment for you to meet with him, because I know he's looking for people to help him grow his company, and I think you'd be a great candidate."
And this was just a neighbor. It wasn't another employee of Jack.
That's right. That's right.
Nice. We had an angel there.
So, so one thing led to another, and
Yeah.
that would be 41 years ago this November.
Wow. Congratulations. Great. And just started at the lowly level of account executive. What was your first account? What did they put you on? I assume you were on the business side, or did they put you on the
Uh,
creative side?
I was on the business
Yeah.
side, and my first account was the Hartford Insurance Group,
Oh, wow.
and we put on events for their top agents.
Yeah.
And then another early day client that I cultivated myself was the Fram Oil Filter Company
Of course. Yeah, I remember that.
up outside of Providence, and then Sun Refining and Marketing, the Sunoco
Of course.
uh, uh,
Yeah. Gas station
gas
company. Yeah.
brand,
Right.
and Campbell Soup Company.
Wow.
And then kind of one of my big breakthrough accounts of my career was unseating an incumbent to do dealer launch events for BMW of North America.
Nice.
And so a great collection of industries and different brands, and my cable sales days positioned me well for uh, persevering and overcoming and breaking into accounts. And Mr. Bailey and Bill Morton taught me how to write and get a good letter
Mm.
and of introduction into people, and one thing led to another, and I was successful in that responsibility, one of the top account people in the agency at a pretty young and early age.
So doing both business development as well as account handling, right?
Absolutely.
You would manage these after you brought them in. That's
Yep.
awesome.
Yep.
And did you start managing and leading people pretty early on? Tell us about at that time.
Yeah, it was once I had proven myself as successful in selling and managing accounts, I was given the responsibility to do some recruiting and bring people on board, and then saw an opportunity for our agency after 6 years in New York to open an office in Boston, because we didn't have an office in Boston, and we were competing for business up there, but losing to some local agencies. And I said to Bill, I'd like the opportunity to explore opening an office up there. And he had enough confidence in me and the market to give me that opportunity.
Nice.
And I went up there, and there were 3 or 4 of us when we started. And after a couple of years, we were one of the fastest growing operations in the business. And that accelerated my responsibility into becoming a regional manager over our East Coast offices, ultimately responsible for HR and acquisitions, and on went the story.
What can you share with our leaders, with our listeners, about some of the leadership lessons you learned during those early years? Because first time managers, that's always a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, I think it's uh, you know sharing and providing the mentorship, counsel, and advice that those had paid forward to me, and paying forward that to those that you recruit and bring on board, and ensuring that you're giving them the time to soak in all your knowledge
Mm.
and advice, when at times you either can kind of instinctively say you can do it yourself because you don't want to take the time to teach them how to do it, or you're too busy with too many other things to take the time to share
Right.
your advice and counsel with them.
Right. Right. Did you have your eyes on the corner office early on there, or aspirations to take over from Bill someday?
When I reflect on that, it wasn't in a competitive way.
Mm.
It was more in it kind of came more naturally.
Mm.
And I've never been one to be on the kind of political animal side of the fence in business. It was more, keep your head down, work hard, do the right thing, remain committed to being a team player.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, it positioned me in the right place to become the third CEO in the then 70 plus year history of the agency, and the first non-family member.
So you did directly succeed Bill.
I did.
Yeah. And at what point in time was it clear to you prior to taking on the CEO role that, you kind of thought maybe this is going to happen?
Probably when I became a pretty influential and early and young part of his executive team.
And what year was that, or how many years
That was
before?
in mid '90s.
Mid 90s.
So I'd been about 11 years into being a part of the agency and had opened the Boston office, uh, grown that, and was appointed to be a member of the executive team when he chose to expand that to create a regional structure. And I was running the East Coast region. So I
Yeah.
became one of three people running three of the regions that then was just across the United States before we expanded internationally.
It was a mid 2000, early 2000s when you became CEO?
Yes,
2005?
yep, 2003. I
Yeah,
became
2003.
president in 2000,
Right.
president and chief operating officer, and then in 2003 I became chief executive officer.
So once you became CEO and then kind of look back at, your leadership experience, what do you think changed at that point in time? When you kind of took over that corner office, was there things that were obvious to you that, that you had learned and needed to do differently, or other things that when you took on more responsibilities, particularly with working now, or rather having some of the peers you'd work closely with, right, directly report to you. Was there changes in your style that you had to go through, or did you pretty much just continue to do the same thing you'd done all those years?
Well, I think it was a combination of the two.
Yeah.
A lot of it on the, continuing to do what I had done, which was, focus on the needs of the clients, ensuring that we were responding to those needs and evolving with those needs, which was a consistent throughout my career and a consistent throughout what made our agency successful and last in a world where agencies don't always last for
Right.
decades or almost now coming upon a century. Um, in addition to that, it was the buck stopped.
Yeah.
The buck stopped with me, and tough decisions, painful decisions, challenging decisions, thought-provoking decisions had to be made and concluded in order to move forward. And um, those included things like go, no go on acquisitions.
Yeah.
Those included things like go, no go on leadership and management changes.
Right.
Those included things like the need for taking severe and critical actions on the expense side in times of economic challenge,
Sure.
like
Yeah.
the impact that September 11th had
Right.
on the live event business, like the impact that the financial crisis had across so many industries,
On
like
advertising.
the
Yeah.
impact that COVID had on, again, our industry in particular.
Right.
Uh, and and successfully guiding the employee and the staff through those difficult times to ensure that we weren't losing, spinning out of control, to be stronger when we came out of those periods,
Right.
which we did on every
Right.
occasion.
Over the course of your career, I'm sure you dived into different development opportunities in terms of, sharpening your saw. What have you found to be kind of some of the most impactful executive development activity for your own advancement?
I really enjoyed the executive education programs
Mm.
that I took advantage of. It was for me. It was self-driven. Um, Bill, prior to me, was very active in YPO. That was something that I decided not to do because I found that that was largely a large group of people who, for the most part, were either founder or family-led CEOs. And in not all instances, and not in any way to be critical of YPO, but I chose a different path of
Yeah.
finding and engaging in exec ed at programs offered by the likes of Dartmouth Tuck School, Harvard Business School, University of North Carolina's business school. Even went to a course that was offered by the one of the leading universities in Beijing.
Mm, fabulous. I did the Wharton Executive Edge programs, speaking of
Mhm.
University of Penn, and I would agree with you, it's fabulous, particularly the cohort-based programs, because you can learn so much from your peers in those situations. Workplace culture is very much driven by the CEO. And gosh, you followed two very successful founders, the original and his son. How do you go about building that culture in that, 15, 20 years, obviously, that you led as CEO? There's some challenges with that.
Yeah, it was something that I found to be a lot of fun, in fact,
Yeah.
and took very seriously. Again, I think that traces back to my roots as a young boy, my focus on sociology as a major, my kind of proclivity for community and friendship, and so what I focused a lot on was bringing people together, creating both events where we brought leadership together for inspiring sessions of education and awareness about what was going on across our agency, what sharing of work, sharing of successes across geographies, recognition, creating consistent and regular recognition events to make people aware of those within the organization who were models and examples and of great success, and little things. One of the things that I would do was I would provide a letter to recognize anniversary dates.
Mm,
The first year, the fifth year, the 10th. I
yeah.
moved it from every year to every 5 years, and I would always get such great response from people for being recognized for their tenure
Mm,
and commitment to the agency, and then just being out there. I've spent a lot of time traveling around to our different operations domestically and internationally to be with our employees, to see our work, to meet our clients, to thank our clients for their partnership,
mm.
to thank our teams for the hard work that they put together, and to see the fruits of the labors that everyone put on to create these extraordinary experiences for our clients.
Manage it by walking around.
Yeah. Hmm.
Very important part of it.
Hmm.
Yeah. Josh, what did you look for when you were making bets on the people you invested in and hired at Jack Morton when you're in that top spot?
Um, a combination of skill sets. First of all, people who are passionate about what we do
Hmm.
and excited about the capabilities and services and offerings that we had for our clients. Then, of course, people who were team players and showed and had a history of either leading or contributing, being contributors to successful teams. And then, uh, uh, beyond that, just, boils down to some instincts, that blink instinct that Malcolm Gladwell talks about in
Hmm.
terms of,
Yeah.
your first and most important impression in engaging and interacting with people. And
It's usually the
it,
right one. Yeah.
it was very interesting to me as we expanded internationally. There's a certain DNA in people in this industry. I often said, while we were spread across, any number of cities that we had operations in, call it 15, 17 cities, if we brought everybody under one roof together, while they came from different cultures, backgrounds, and countries, they would all share a common thread of what made them successful in this business.
Love that. Did you have a favorite interview question or scenario that helped you kind of get at the truth from candidates that wanted to work for you?
What are you most proud of in your career?
Hmm.
Would be one of them. In addition to that, what is it that makes you most interested in being a part of our organization? And if you are to become part of the agency, where would you like to see yourself in 5 years' time down the road?
Yeah, great stuff. Well, Josh, you've been super, super generous with your time. Very much appreciated. But we always have one last guest for all our CEO and past CEO guests. And that's kind of what Career and Life advice would give to someone that has their eyes on the corner office for themselves someday.
Well, it's hard to boil it down to one thing, but I think it's at the end of the day, make sure that you're spending time doing what you're most passionate about. You're going to spend 5/7 of your life in general in your working career, and if you're not feeling where you are is what you're passionate about doing, then find your passion. And because I always believe that people do their best at what they're most passionate about.
So true. As Chairman Emeritus of Jack Morton Worldwide, Josh works with the agency's leadership team to foster continued growth with key clients and assist in recruiting senior level talent. Josh McCall, thank you so much for sharing your journey into the corner office.
Great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to Into the Corner Office with Brant Hanley. We hope you enjoyed hearing our guest CEO story as much as we did. If you want to hear more CEOs reveal their journey into the corner office, please subscribe via iTunes and tell your friends and colleagues. For more information about Brant, Resource Options International, and the mighty middle market, visit www.goforroi.com. We look forward to having you join us for our next episode.